Okay, so when they ask about this directives, right? So in the interviews, it will be a straightforward question that like what is a directive, but when you're explaining, right, so you have to always compare it with components. Then only you'll be able to tell what is a directive, right? So again, component itself is a directive, but excuse me. Component itself is a directive, but the main difference between directive and components is, I think already you know, right? You remember or so?
Yeah, I think behavior to the existing documents.
I didn't get that.
So we can create a decorator with that ng
Yeah,
d.
both we can create with ng command, but the major difference between a component and directive is a component will have HTML template and
Yeah,
CSS,
yes,
but whereas a
and
directive
that's
will not
not
have.
that.
Yeah, so even if you look at the structure of directive, then you can see only selector as a property inside your decorator. But whereas for component, you'll have two more, template URL and the CSS style URL, right?
Yeah.
So that is the main difference between a directive and a component. So while explaining a directive, you have to tell that first, and then you can talk about types of directives. We have three types. One is a component type, other one is attribute, the other one is structural directives. So component is differently, like entirely different concept, right? So you can tell component itself is a directive, but in Angular 1 it was called directive, but they introduced components in Angular 2. So the component is a separate concept. And second one is attribute directives. So attribute directives mostly we use for changing the existing behavior of HTML element or any other component, or you can add some styles like behavior or styles. Okay, just remember that one, behavior or the look and feel of the element. So in order to change those, you'll be using attribute directives. And whereas structural directives are different. Structural directives basically to control the template structure. So basically to add some content or to remove some content from the DOM. Mostly like we saw three types of structural directives. The first one is ngIf and ngIf else, and second one is ngFor, and the third one is ng switch. So these three will come under the structural directives. Okay. So yeah, if they ask about directives, first thing is you can tell a directive basically used to change the appearance or behavior of the DOM structure, like DOM elements. And basically there are three types of directives. One is the component directives, second one is the structure directives, third one is attribute directives, and you can tell a single line about each type. Okay. So but if they ask about components, mostly they will not ask about directives. This is what I observed normally. And they can ask syntax of ngIf or ngIf else, because ngIf else is little tricky, right? So ngIf is straightforward. You'll be having this star ngIf, and yeah, they'll ask about this one. Structural directives will always have star as a prefix. These are predefined directives from Angular framework, and in order to identify whether it's a structural directive or attribute directive or like other some other directive, then the difference is structural directives will have star here, star prefix. Okay. And as I was saying, they might ask about the if else syntax. So this you have to remember. Basically, in the if else scenario, first one is the if part, this one, If it is true, then this will be executed. If this is false, then to go to else block. So else block and if block is separated by semicolon, right? So in the else block, it will go to this template, wherever this template is displayed. Then it will take this content between the template tag and it will replace here. Okay, so it's like a if else, but if in case of true, it will execute this. In case of false, it will bring this content and it will put it here because we are using this reference. This is a template reference variable. Okay, and the second one is ngFor. ngFor is used to basically to repeat same template across a certain set of elements or some list of elements, some kind of student list you are displaying in the UI, or some employee you are displaying employee information and employee table. So in those cases, we can use for loop to basically iterate same template multiple times and render data in the HTML. So this is just for rendering multiple sets of data, of course, same set of data, and basically to reuse the existing template. So basically, if you are displaying a student table or employee table, all the rows are same. The HTML for each row is same, right? So basically, we will be reusing the same HTML row, but every time the loop is iterated, the content in that row will change and it will generate a new set of HTML template. So basically to repeat mostly, we'll be using for loop, just like any other programming languages, right? And yeah, one more thing is for each one, have something in mind. Like for example, if they ask about ngIf, then you can give this example. Okay, if user is logged in or not. So that status we can check using some Boolean variable, and then we can show this based on this value. So that specific example you must have in your mind before answering everything, right? Every question. Otherwise, what will happen? If they ask about it, you know the answer, but you're not able to communicate it properly. So that will be very bad because you already know the answer. If you doesn't know the answer, that makes sense. But if you already know the answer, but you are not able to communicate it, it will look bad. So in that cases, just have a simple example which you can remember for each scenario, and just try to tell the concept using the scenario. So it will be easy to remember each concept. Okay. So even for loop also, you can remember something like this very simple thing. Let item of this array, and every time I'm displaying this item, right, using the interpolation syntax. So you can remember this single line, and you can just tell this single line. Okay, this cases we can use ng for, but this you are using this just to demonstrate the for loop. But mostly this will be some student list or employee list or some kind of list data. And then the ng switch. So in the ng switch, basically ng if else we can use for one or two conditions, but if your condition list is growing, then that ng if else syntax will make your template look like messy, right? So in order to keep it clean, we can go for ng switch. So ng switch can accommodate as many conditions as possible without cluttering your template. So the syntax is very clean. There will be a container element, and the container element is closed here, and there will be inner elements, and in each inner element will have the structural switch case directive, which is ng switch case, and there will be a match condition. Okay, and you'll have for each condition you'll have a single row like this, or like single element, inner element, and then if any of those doesn't match, finally we will be displaying the final element. So this one. So this is a default case. So instead of having, if you take this example, you need to have like ng if else again else, right? So the basically kind of 4 if else you need to have for these 4 conditions. But in this case, the template will look like much cleaner, right? So only for that purpose we use switch statement. But you can basically achieve same thing with the ng if else also without using switch case. So let's see a simple example again, right? So you have a number here in your component and you want to use that as a condition in your switch case in your template, right? So ng switch is this is the container element, because this is where we are basically telling switch will start, and this is the this is the directive which is telling Angular that okay, this is what our container element, and it is taking that number as a value here, and then below, just like our syntax was telling, star ng switch case equals if it is 1, then display this one. If it is 2, then display this. If it is 3, display this, and so on. If it doesn't match any of this, then just display this value. Okay, and the main advantage of this one is if one is executed successfully, it will not execute others. Okay, so if any of these are not executed, then it will go for the default one. Okay, so basically you can achieve this with the ng if else also, but this way your template will look much cleaner. Okay, so these are the main structural directives we have. Okay, and when it comes to attribute directives, there are many attribute directives basically, but we covered only few. A few basic things we covered. So ng style is one, just to add style in your uh, elements, inline CSS in your elements. You can basically add this one, but you can achieve this by default attribute of this HTML elements, right? So we have a style attribute for each HTML element, and you can basically add like this also. But the reason why they added this is this CSS can be inside your component class also. So if you see here, the border style is coming from this class. So the value is this one. So mostly these scenarios, right? So whenever you click or whenever you do something or some value is coming from the backend, like someone is failed or someone is passed, the student status, and then you'll be displaying different colors based on that backend value, right? So in those cases, you will be modifying this border style value dynamically based on the backend response. That is the reason you will be having this syntax. um, and as I was saying, this is a attribute directive. So attribute directives always is closed in with the square brackets. Okay, that is the main difference between structural directive and attribute directives. So structural directives will always have a star prefix, whereas the attribute directives will have the square brackets. And we have ng class. Instead of colors, we can basically dynamically change class of some component based on some boolean value. Okay, so instead of I basically going and explaining these things, right? So I would suggest just go to this site. Angular IO built-in directives. Yeah, in this link, basically you can find all the built-in directives: ng class, ng style, ng model, and each one explained with some example. ngif, ngfor, switch. Oh, here also they didn't give all the examples. They gave only important ones. Okay, I'll give you some link. Basically, there are many, but in the main site they are giving only few. Okay, everyone is basically giving same content just for content hits. Okay. Let me take note and list of okay. And if they ask about create custom directory, you know already the syntax, right? So just remember one thing. Whenever you're basically trying to create any building blocks or any main things in Angular, right? There is only one syntax, which is ng generate. If it is a directive, then you will be having a directive. If it is a component, you'll be having a component. If it is a service, it will be service. So just like that, you can basically remember all the topics like pipes and interceptors and all those things, right? The services, components, directives, classes, enums. So you will be using the same syntax. Only thing is this one will change. So just remember that, then you're good. So mostly like all these simple questions you will be able to answer. Like how can you create a directive? You can easily answer if you just remember that. Okay. So another question is how can use a component? We already covered, but how can we use a directive? Okay. So it's in order to use a component, we basically use the selector of that component and then just use it as a HTML tag. We use a opening Angular bracket and closing Angular bracket, and then you'll be using that. You'll be calling that component. But whereas if you, in order to use the directive, you just have to use that selector name here, right? So we have selector name as this, and we just have to use that so that this directive will be called. So you can, instead of p, you can use any tag here, doesn't matter. But wherever Angular encounters this one, it will look whether this directive is available in your application or not. So if it finds a selector with this one, that same name, then it will call this constructor dynamically for each element. Let's say you have 10 elements like this, and on in 10 elements you are using the same directive, then basically it will execute the directive 10 times. Okay, so that is one thing. So how can you use a directive? Directive you can refer with that selector name, and you can basically apply to any tag or any component or anywhere. Just put this one as attribute, then it will be called. Okay, so that is another question. And how to use events, mouse events in directive. So this is also one question. Directives. Okay. In Angular, components, right? So basically, you can have that click event inside your template, because components has templates, right? So in that template, you can have the click event or some kind of mouse enter, mouse over. So all these events basically you can handle. So that's the reason it will be easy in components. But whereas in directives, we don't have template, right? So in order to use uh, any event, click event, and mouse enter, mouse leave, mouse over. So all the double click. So all these events you can handle using this method decorator, because we are putting on top of method. So this will become a method decorator. So which is host listener. So which host it is talking about? So the host is this paragraph tag is host here in this case. So if you put this on any element, then that element become the host. So we are telling the host listener and listen for this event, mouse enter event. And once this mouse is entered, then just call this method. Okay, because we are putting on top of this method, right? So whenever this mouse enter event happens on top of this paragraph tag, then it will call this method. And once mouse leave event occurs, then again it will call this method. So here what I'm doing, I'm just calling some method, this method, which is basically highlighting the background color of the host event, sorry, host element. And once mouse leaves, then I'm setting the background color to default one or empty. So this is just a demonstration, but the idea is, so to handle mouse events inside your directive, then you have to use this host listener. Okay. So any questions so far? I see both are silent.
No.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. Pipes, they just ask about the currency example, because mostly we'll be using some other cases also we'll be using for filtering data, or like searching data. In case of if you have, let's say, list of countries, and user is typing the some country name in the text field, then basically some pages, right? So they'll show the suggestions of which countries you are basically trying to search. So those cases we can use these pipes. But other best example is the currency one. Okay, so whenever you have some number and you want to show currency symbol, then basically you can put a currency pipe here, and it will be displayed like this. So these extra characters it will add. But mostly they'll ask like what is a pipe, right? So basically pipe is like, as it says, it takes data from one end and it gives transformed data from other end. So that is the advantage of pipe. So just remember pipe, right? So just imagine a pipe utility, so which takes data from one end and sends into other end. But in the meanwhile, it will change the data. Okay, it will transform it to some other type. It might add some extra decoration, or it might add it might remove some data, or it will add some padding. So it depends based on your custom implementation. So basically we have many pipes. I think we have in Angular IO. .io. Okay, we have all these pipes. Date pipe basically transforms data. Uppercase pipe will transform your text to uppercase. Lowercase will change your text to lowercase. Currency pipe, we already saw. Decimal pipe, how many decimal points you want after some number. Okay, and percent pipe. Um, and we also have some other pipes also. Okay, we definitely have more pipes. I think here they give only few examples, but we have other pipes also. But this is main important, the date pipe, right? So because most of the times in the database, applications save the full date. Full date meaning the including the time, date, seconds, everything. But while displaying in the UI, we display only the country specific format, because in India we show one format, and in USA we show different format, and in Europe we show some different format, right? So the localized data or like localized date format we show. So basically, in order to achieve that, if let's say this pipe is not present or this feature is not present, then in order to achieve that, then we have to do that in the API itself. Or once data comes to the Angular application or any other React application, then we have to write some logic to change the date to that local date or like localized date and then display, right? And here it is simple in Angular. Just we use the date pipe just like this, and we mention the format. Yeah, here it is. So if you say if you send that short string to the date pipe, then it will give you output like this. It doesn't matter what format you save in the database. Once you create a data object in a JavaScript and you just try to pass short, then it will give you this output. And if you send minimum medium as a input, then it will change to this. The same way we have many types. Short date is like M day, month date, and YY. And medium date has this one. And for time, these are the inputs. Okay, so just explore this. They I don't think they'll ask about this specific thing, but this is very important when you are working on actual applications, because formatting a simple rate to this format, but database from database, let's say this is coming like this, but in your application you have to show this format. Then if you don't know about the date pipe, it will be very difficult to get this format, because dates are very tricky. But if you use this syntax directly, then it will be very easy. Just within one line you can finish this entire thing. Okay. Interviews, they definitely mostly they'll not ask, but for working you must have some idea on what date pipe can do. Okay, so that is about pipes. And as I was saying, there are, yeah, here I think I mentioned many pipes, right? So the JSON pipe and key value pipe, uh, slice, basically it will slice your array into, basically it will remove some elements. It's kind of a filtering. So async pipe also there. Basically async pipe is to read data from observables. Okay, title case is there to convert your text into the camel case, the first letter capital, right? So these are the built-in pipes, but they just ask about what is a pipe and how can you create a custom pipe. They'll not ask about mostly this, but while telling, just remember the currency pipe. Okay, remember a currency pipe, and basically currency pipe will be able to tell that what is the exact use of pipes. Right, this is a simple example. So for pipes, when it comes to pipe, remember the currency pipe example, or uppercase and lowercase pipes. This will be also easy, right? So just try to remember these things: uppercase, lowercase, currency. Okay, and creating is just like ng generate and the instead of surface component directory, you can say pipe, and it will create a pipe. You can for better example you can give this one, but if you are confident then give this example. Otherwise I would say go for that lowercase or uppercase pipes, because pipes can be used to filter data also. As I was saying, in order to filter some data, the country, if user is typing country, then it will give some suggestions, right? The matched suggestions. So in that cases we can use this syntax, like assume that this is a country list, and this is where you are entering the data in the input element, and this is where you're showing the suggestions. So we are using this pipe here, filter pipe. So filter pipe is custom pipe I created here. So filter pipe, and filter pipe is taking one parameter called search text, and the search text is this one, the whatever user entered value. So it will filter from these categories and it will show as you type inside this text box. But this is a bit complicated example, but I would suggest go for this if you want to improve impress the interviewer. Okay. Oh, I didn't add about async pipes also. Okay, I'll take note of this one. So yeah, I think today we are 40 minutes. I have to attend other class also. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Otherwise, we can conclude today's session and we'll connect tomorrow.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah. Thank you both.
Thank you.